I never thought I'd find myself in a situation like this, but here I am. My name's Mark, and I've been married to Lisa for about 6 years now. We met in college, and honestly, I thought we had a good thing going. She was sharp, confident, a little bitchy sometimes, classic, but I liked her. She had this fiery attitude that kept things interesting. I always thought we balanced each other out, even if she could be a bit of a pain in the ass. At first, everything seemed normal. We'd come home from work, watch TV, go out with friends, the usual. But over the past few months, I started noticing little things. She'd be more secretive about her phone, always kept her messages hidden, and she'd come home late more often. She'd make up excuses, work, a friend's party, some spiritual retreat she suddenly signed up for. Yeah, I know, sounds like a joke now, but at the time I bought it. One day I decided to do some digging. I don't know what made me suspicious, maybe intuition, maybe just boredom. I found her phone one night when she was out with her spiritual group. She told me she was meeting with some medium named Harold, claiming he could channel her dead twin sister, Emily. She said it was just a spiritual thing, that it helped her get closure. Honestly, I didn't think much of it at first. I figured it was her weird way of coping with the loss. But then I noticed something strange. Her messages with Harold were way more frequent than I thought. They weren't just about spiritual sessions. There was flirting, quick touches of sarcasm, and a lot of teasing that didn't sit right. I decided to go further. I checked her emails, her social media, and what do you know, she had private chats with Harold that were clearly more than just some spiritual thing. The way they talked, the innuendos, the way Harold always signed off with "can't wait to see you again." It was obvious they were fucking around. I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. The worst part. All this was happening while I was working long hours at the office, thinking she was connecting spiritually, while she was actually connecting to some guy who was probably lying to her about channeling my dead twin. I kept all this to myself for a while. I didn't want to confront her right away. What's the point? I wasn't ready to deal with the fallout. But the more I thought about it, the angrier I got. How could she be such a bitch? Pretending to be this wounded woman crying over her loss when she was secretly screwing around behind my back. And with some fake medium who claimed to have this special spiritual connection with her twin, it was disgusting. I mean, she lied about everything, her feelings, her grief, her entire life. She used that as an excuse to hide her affair, to get away with her cheating. So I decided to set a trap. I started following her around a little, watching her get into Harold's car during those supposed spiritual sessions. I even bought a tiny voice recorder and hid it in my pocket during one of her meetings. That night, I waited outside her favorite coffee shop where she went after her last session. She was late, and I saw Harold's car pull up. I followed her in, sat at a table, and listened. That's when I heard the lies spill out. She told Harold she loved him, that she wanted to leave me, that I was just a boring, predictable guy who didn't understand her spiritual side. They were planning to meet again the next night. That's when I knew I had enough. I couldn't believe I'd been so blind. I thought I knew my wife, but I was wrong. She wasn't just cheating on me. She was doing it right in front of my face, masquerading it as some kind of spiritual ritual. That's when it hit me. I had to confront her. But first I had to prepare myself for what was coming. I was furious, so furious I could hardly breathe. But I knew I had to be smart about this. If she was lying about one thing, she'd lie about everything. And I needed to catch her in her own trap to make her realize I wasn't going to take this lying down. The moment of truth was coming, and I was trying to brace myself for whatever she'd say. But deep down, I already knew I'd never see her the same way again. The woman I thought I married was nothing but a stranger hiding behind lies, telling herself she was some kind of spiritual victim, while all along she was just another cheating bitch. The confrontation finally happened a few days later. I couldn't keep it bottled up anymore. I waited until she came home from one of her sessions with Harold. She strutted into the house, all confident, acting like she'd been doing nothing wrong. I was sitting in the living room, my hands clenched into fists, trying to keep my composure. She looked at me, smirking, like she knew she'd get away with everything. That's what made it so infuriating, her attitude, her smugness. "Hey babe," she said, dropping her purse on the table. "What's up with you? You've been acting weird lately." She flicked her hair and sat down on the couch, crossing her legs. She looked like she was trying to act innocent, but I wasn't buying it. I'd already recorded everything I needed and I was ready to lay it all out. "You know what, Lisa?" I started, voice steady but cold. "I've had enough of your lies. I know about Harold. I know about your little spiritual connection sessions in our bedroom while I was at work. I know you've been screwing around with him behind my back pretending to talk to your dead twin." Her face froze for a split second, then she burst into laughter. "Oh, come on, Mark," she said, rolling her eyes. "You're overreacting. Harold is just a guy who helps me process my grief. You don't understand how hard it's been. You're so busy with your stupid job." "Stop," I interrupted sharply. "I've heard enough. All those messages, all those late-night calls. I have recordings. I have proof that you're lying right now." I pulled out my phone and played the audio. Her face turned pale. I could hear her whispering to Harold, telling him she loved him, that she wanted to leave me, that she couldn't keep pretending everything was okay. She tried to deny it at first, claiming it was all a misunderstanding, that Harold was just a friend, that I was jealous and paranoid. But I wasn't buying her bullshit anymore. I told her I'd been patient, I'd given her space, but I couldn't forgive the betrayal. That she'd lied to me about everything, about her feelings, her grief, her entire life. Her response was classic Lisa. She threw a tantrum, calling me insecure, jealous, possessive. She said I didn't understand her spiritual needs, that I was just an obstacle in her path to happiness. She even had the nerve to cry, act like the victim, trying to guilt me into feeling sorry for her. But I saw through her act. I could see the anger and contempt behind her tears. She didn't care about her grief or the supposed spiritual connection. She cared about hiding her affair, about sneaking around behind my back. I was furious, but I kept my voice steady. I told her it was over. I said she could pack her shit and leave if she wanted, but I wasn't sticking around to be humiliated anymore. I wanted her gone, and I wanted her to know I wasn't stupid, that I wasn't going to be some fool who believed her lies. Honestly, I felt a mix of shock and relief. Part of me had expected her to deny everything, maybe even try to manipulate me into feeling guilty. But her silence after I played that recording said everything. She knew she'd been caught dead to rights. That night, she packed a bag and left. She was angry, yelling at me, calling me all kinds of names, controlling, insecure, a jealous psycho, but I didn't care. I felt a strange sense of clarity, like I'd finally seen the truth of who she was. The woman I married, the woman I loved, had been a fraud. She used her grief and her supposed spiritual connection as cover for her betrayal. I never thought she'd do something so cold and manipulative, but she did. Now I was left with the aftermath. My house felt empty. Everything was quiet, too quiet. I kept replaying what I'd found, what I'd heard. I kept asking myself how I didn't see it sooner, how I didn't sense her lies. But I guess sometimes people are better at hiding their true selves than you think. I felt anger, betrayal, and a deep sadness that I still can't fully put into words. But I also felt a strange sense of liberation. I was finally free from her bullshit. Looking back now, I realize how much this has changed me. I trusted her completely, and she threw it all away for some guy pretending to channel spirits in our own bedroom. The worst part, I think she actually convinced herself that her lying was justified. She convinced herself she was doing some kind of spiritual work. That's what makes it so sickening. She lied so much, she even convinced herself she was the victim. I don't know what's next for me. Part of me wants to rebuild, to find someone who actually respects me. Part of me feels broken, like I've lost more than just a wife. I lost the idea of what I thought we had. But one thing's certain, I'll never trust her again, and I'll never forget the betrayal. If you're out there wondering if someone's cheating, trust your gut. Because once you find out, everything changes. And it's a pain I wouldn't wish on anyone. After she left that night, I thought I'd feel some kind of relief, like finally closing that chapter. But honestly, I felt worse. The house was dead silent, and every little thing reminded me of what she'd done. Her scent still lingered in the bedroom, and I couldn't help but replay every moment. Her sneaking around, lying, the way she looked at Harold like he was her salvation. It was disgusting. I was also angry at myself for not seeing the signs sooner, for being so blind to her lies. I kept asking myself if I missed something, if I ignored the clues because I didn't want to believe she could do something so cruel. The next days were a blur. I threw myself into work, trying to drown out the feelings, but it didn't work. Deep down, I was devastated, more than I expected. I'd trusted her with everything, and she'd just thrown me away like yesterday's trash. I kept thinking about her attitude, how she acted like she was the victim, how she lied so convincingly. She'd always been a good liar, but I guess I was too stupid to see it. I also started thinking about Harold. Who was he? What kind of sick person pretended to channel spirits and then used that as an excuse to cheat? I looked him up online. He's some kind of fake medium, probably a scam artist. That made me even angrier. How could someone be so manipulative? Pretend to talk to someone's dead twin just to get close enough to cheat. It was sickening. Part of me wanted revenge. Not some petty revenge. I'm not that type of guy. But I wanted to make Harold pay for what he did. I wanted to expose him, ruin his reputation, make him regret ever messing with my wife. But I also knew that getting revenge could backfire, especially when she was already so good at lying and manipulation. I had to be smart. I decided to dig further, see if I could find any more dirt on Harold, any vulnerabilities I could exploit. That's when I found out Harold had a pattern of scamming women, pretending to be some spiritual healer while secretly hooking up with them. I got access to some of his past clients' reviews. Most of them were glowing, but a few mentioned strange, inappropriate encounters, even some threats to keep quiet. That was my opening. Harold wasn't just some innocent medium. He was a con artist, a manipulative bastard who preyed on lonely, vulnerable women. That made me feel a little better. At least I wasn't the only one he'd screwed over. But it didn't make me feel any less broken about Lisa. I started to realize something else. Lisa's whole act, her tears, her pretending to be this wounded woman, she was a master manipulator. She knew exactly how to play the victim, how to make me feel guilty. Her bitchy attitude was just her way of keeping control, pushing everyone away so she could do whatever she wanted. The more I thought about it, the more I saw her for what she really was. A liar, a cheater, a woman who used her grief and her spiritual connection as an excuse. One night I was sitting alone in the dark, scrolling through her old messages, trying to piece everything together. That's when I found a message from her. It was a screenshot of a text Harold had sent her, saying he wanted to meet again that week. She was planning to see him behind my back, even after all the promises she'd made about ending it. That was the final straw. I realized that she wasn't just a cheating wife, she was a manipulative, lying, selfish person who was still planning to see Harold even after I'd caught her. That's when I decided I had to take control of the situation. I couldn't let her keep lying, keep sneaking around. I knew I had enough proof now, enough to destroy her reputation if I wanted. But I also knew I had to be careful. If I made a move too soon, she'd just deny everything and turn the tables on me. So I laid low, planning my next step. I wanted her to see that I wasn't going to be some pushover, that I had the power to ruin her if I chose to. In the meantime, I started reaching out to a few of her friends, people she trusted, and told them what I found. Not to gossip, just to warn them in case she was spinning her lies. I also installed a few hidden cameras around the house, more out of curiosity than anything else. I wanted to catch her in the act if she ever tried to come back, or maybe even see if Harold was around. I didn't want to be the fool who got played again. Honestly, I felt a strange mixture of anger and despair. I had lost not just my wife but also the sense of security I once felt. I couldn't trust her anymore, and I doubted I'd ever be able to look at her the same way. I kept thinking about the fake spiritual connection she claimed to have with her dead sister. Was it all just a lie? Did she even believe it, or was she just that good at deceiving everyone? The thought made me sick. I kept telling myself, no matter what happens next, I'll never let her manipulate me again. I've learned a hard lesson about trusting blind. That sometimes the people you love the most are the ones who can hurt you the deepest. And I guess I'm still trying to figure out how to move on from this. But one thing I know for sure, next time I'll be more careful about who I let into my life. Because when someone's that good at lying, you never really know who they are until it's too late. The days that followed were a blur of restless nights and endless thoughts. I kept revisiting everything I uncovered. Her messages, Harold's shady past, the way she used her so-called spiritual grief as a smokescreen. I couldn't shake the feeling of betrayal, like I'd been living in a nightmare I never woke up from. Every time I thought about confronting her again, a surge of anger would flood through me. But I knew I had to stay calm to be strategic. I couldn't let her see how much she'd broken me, not yet. One evening, I decided to do some more digging into Harold. I found a few reviews online, mostly glowing but a handful of warning signs. Some women claimed he was a scam artist, that he'd made false promises, and in one case, threatened to expose a woman's secret if she dared to tell anyone. It was enough to put me on edge. Harold was dangerous, not just a fool pretending to talk to spirits. He was manipulative, and I wasn't about to let him get away with ruining more lives. I also managed to find out Harold's usual hangout spots, some shady cafes where he met clients. That gave me an idea. If I could find a way to catch him in person, maybe I could get concrete proof he was lying about everything. I wasn't planning anything illegal, just a little covert observation. I wanted to see if Harold had a pattern, if he was really just a con artist or if he was worse. Meanwhile, Lisa was trying to reach out to me, surprisingly. I expected her to be more desperate, but she just sent a few passive-aggressive texts, accusing me of destroying her spiritual journey, calling me jealous and insecure, and whining about how she was just trying to find herself. I ignored most of it. Honestly, I didn't want to hear her lies anymore. I'd already seen what she was capable of, and I wasn't falling for her manipulations again. One day, I got a tip from a guy I knew who worked at one of Harold's favorite cafes. He told me Harold was there almost every afternoon, meeting with women, whispering in their ears. That was my cue. I decided to go there myself just to observe. I parked nearby, kept a low profile, and took a seat across the street with my phone ready. I didn't want to stare directly, but wanted to see if Harold was really there, who he was meeting, and how he acted when he wasn't pretending to be some spiritual healer. It wasn't long before Harold showed up, early in the afternoon, just like the tip said. He was a scrawny guy, a little greasy, with a greasy smile. He sat in that corner booth, talking to a woman who looked nervous, probably another victim. I watched him for a while, taking mental notes. The way he kept leaning in, whispering into her ear, his hand resting on hers, the way she responded eagerly, like she was desperate for some kind of validation. It confirmed everything I suspected. Harold wasn't some innocent medium. He was a manipulative predator, preying on vulnerable women, making them believe his lies. Seeing that in person made my blood boil. I wanted to march right in there and blow his cover. But I knew I needed to be patient. I had to gather more evidence, maybe even record their conversations if I could. I wanted solid proof, something irrefutable that I could use to destroy him publicly, because, at this point, I was past just wanting revenge. I wanted to make sure that Harold's scam came crashing down, and that Lisa saw exactly who she was messing with. The next step was obvious. I had to set a trap for her, for Harold, or both. I started thinking about how I could do that without getting caught myself. Maybe I'd send a fake message pretending to be Harold, setting up a meet. Or maybe I'd convince her I was willing to talk, get her to come back, then turn the tables. Whatever it took, I needed her to see that I wasn't just some fool she could manipulate anymore. I had become the hunter, not the hunted. All of this was a lot to process. I felt like I was in some intense game of chess with my life, my marriage, and my dignity on the line. Deep inside, I still loved Lisa. Hell, part of me still wanted to believe she was just confused, that her grief had made her do crazy things. But that hope was fading fast. The more I saw, the clearer it became. She had lied to me about everything. The woman I thought I knew was just a mask she wore to cover her true self. Selfish, manipulative, and willing to cheat, lie, and manipulate her way through life. I kept reminding myself, I can't let her win. I won't let her keep pretending everything's okay. I owe myself that much. And I owed it to the man I used to be before all this mess started, someone who trusted, who believed in love. But now I was starting to see the truth. And the truth was not pretty. It's hard to admit, but I was exhausted from the emotional roller coaster. I kept telling myself I'd come out of this stronger, smarter. Because if I don't, I'll just keep getting hurt. And I've had enough of that. The more I watched Harold from that cafe across the street, the more I realized how deep this rabbit hole went. I recorded several of his conversations with women, those sweet, innocent women who just wanted some comfort, some guidance. What I heard wasn't spiritual at all. It was manipulation, straight-up exploitation. Harold played the part of a healer, but all he really wanted was to get close, to get their trust, and then use it against them. It made me sick to my stomach. One thing I noticed was his pattern. Every time he met with a new woman, he would start with some vague spiritual nonsense, then subtly steer the conversation toward personal stuff, insecurities, fears, past heartbreaks. He tell them they were special, that he could help them find peace, and that their loved ones were trying to communicate. But in reality, he was just fishing for vulnerabilities. He'd extract information, then use it to lure them in further sessions. It was classic scam artist behavior, but with a creepy spiritual twist. Watching Harold work, I kept thinking about Lisa, how she fell for it, how she believed she was talking to her dead twin, the way she clung to Harold's words, soaking in every fake message like it was gospel. That's when it hit me. She wasn't just cheating on me physically. She was also cheating on me emotionally, mentally, with this con artist who was feeding her lies. Maybe that was the real betrayal, her willingness to lie to herself, to justify her actions with some fake spiritual bullcrap. I knew I couldn't keep watching from a distance forever. I had to do something concrete, something that would make all of this come crashing down. I decided to reach out to one of Harold's previous clients, someone who left a warning review online. I messaged her, pretending to be interested in Harold's services, and asked if she'd be willing to talk. Surprisingly, she agreed and we set up a meeting. I wanted to hear her story firsthand, get her version of what Harold was really like. When I finally spoke with her, she told me Harold promised her spiritual guidance, but it turned into a series of inappropriate encounters. She described how he'd manipulate her, tell her she was destined for something special, and then pressure her to meet him alone. She admitted she was embarrassed and ashamed, but also angry because she realized she'd been taken advantage of. Hearing her story, I felt a mixture of rage and relief. Rage that Harold was such a bastard, and relief that I had someone to confirm what I suspected all along. Meanwhile, Lisa still kept trying to reach me. She sent a message one night sobbing, claiming she was lost, that she didn't mean to hurt me, that Harold was just a treatment she needed to get through her grief. I read it and just shook my head. I couldn't believe how easily she spun her lies. She thought I didn't see through her, thought I was too stupid to notice. But I'd had enough. I was tired of her crying crocodile tears, tired of her preaching about her spiritual journey while she was secretly screwing Harold. I decided it was time to confront her directly, but this time differently. I sent her a simple message. You want to talk? Meet me somewhere public tomorrow. No lies, no bullshit. I wanted her to think she still had control, but I knew I was setting the trap. I wanted her to believe she could manipulate me one last time, but really I was planning to record everything, just in case she tried to deny the truth. The next day she showed up at the coffee shop, acting tough, acting like she was the victim. She tried her typical bitchy attitude, throwing her hair back and smirking, but I wasn't falling for it. I pulled out my phone, turned on the voice recorder, and just sat there. I didn't say much. I let her talk. She ranted about how misunderstood she was, how Harold was her spiritual healer, how I was just controlling and insecure. She insisted she didn't cheat, that it was all just emotional and spiritual, and that I was overreacting. That's when I played the recordings I had of Harold's voice, his voice whispering to other women, making promises, talking about their deep connection. Her face drained of color. She tried to deny everything, to gaslight me, but I had the proof. I told her she was a liar, that she'd been caught red-handed. Her reaction was priceless. She looked stunned, then furious, then finally resigned. She knew she'd been defeated. At that moment, I felt a strange mixture of satisfaction and emptiness. I'd finally exposed her lies, and Harold's scam was out in the open. But I also knew this wasn't just about revenge anymore. It was about reclaiming my life, my dignity. I realized I'd wasted too much time on someone who didn't deserve my trust. She was a manipulative, selfish woman who used her grief as a shield, and I'd been too blind to see it. So I told her to leave for good this time. Her bitchy attitude turned into tears, but they felt hollow. I didn't care anymore. I felt a strange sense of clarity. I couldn't fix her, I couldn't change her, and I definitely couldn't stay married to someone who lied and cheated and manipulated me in such a twisted way. I watched her walk out that door, knowing I'd never let her do this to me again. I promised myself I'd rebuild, even if it meant starting over alone. Because at the end of the day, I deserved better than someone who used a fake spiritual connection to screw around behind my back. In the aftermath of everything, I've done a lot of reflecting. The house still feels empty, but somehow it's also a little lighter. I finally cleaned out all her stuff, pictures, clothes, the little mementos she clung to as if they meant anything anymore. I couldn't keep her memories cluttering up my space. It's strange how something so familiar can suddenly feel so distant, so cold. I keep asking myself how I let it go on for so long, how I ignored the signs, how I believed her lies even when everyone else could see through them. People say forgiveness is supposed to set you free, but I don't think I'm there yet. Right now, I just feel relief. Relief that I've finally uncovered the truth, that I didn't let her manipulate me anymore, that I took back control. The scars are still fresh, but I know I'll heal, even if it takes time. I've learned some harsh lessons about trust, about the danger of ignoring your gut, and about how manipulative people can be, especially when they've got a good story to hide behind. I've also come to realize that some people are just better at lying than you think. Lisa was one of those people. She told herself she was doing some kind of spiritual work, that Harold was her guide, her confidant. But all she really wanted was an escape, an affair with someone who fed her ego and her lies. Her bitchy attitude, her constant manipulations, they all masked a deep insecurity she refused to face. And I fell for it for a while. That's what hurts the most, knowing I was blind, thinking I knew her, only to find out she'd been playing me all along. Now I'm left with a new perspective, hope, maybe, or at least a cautious optimism. I know I need to rebuild trust in myself first, trust that I can spot the lies before they destroy me again. I've blocked her number, cut off all contact, and moved most of her belongings out. I've been talking to friends, trying to get some perspective, and honestly, it's helped. I've realized I'm stronger than I thought. I may be hurting, but I'm not broken. Not entirely. One thing I want to say to anyone reading this: if you're in a situation like I was, trust your instincts. When something feels off, it probably is. Don't ignore the signs, even if they seem small or insignificant at first. People like Harold, and even Lisa in her own twisted way, will manipulate and lie until they think they can get away with it. And sometimes, the only way to truly free yourself is to face the ugly truth head-on and walk away. I've learned that no matter how much you love someone, if they keep lying, if they keep manipulating, then love isn't enough. You have to protect yourself. You have to value your own dignity. I will never forget what I went through, but I also refuse to let it define me. I'm going to focus on healing, on rebuilding my life, and on making sure I never fall for this kind of deception again. This whole ordeal has been a brutal lesson in trust, betrayal, and resilience. It's taught me that sometimes you have to lose everything to realize what truly matters. And what matters most now is my peace of mind, my honesty with myself, and the hope that someday I'll find someone who's worthy of my trust, someone who doesn't hide behind lies or fake spiritual bullcrap to cheat and manipulate. I'm finally done with her, and honestly, that feels like freedom. I know I'll be okay. I have to be. Because if there's one thing I've learned, it's that no matter how dark things get, there's always a way out. And I refuse to be anyone's fool anymore.